Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, here with Benji for the Women's Awards Show. Complete awards show going through Best Classics Rider, All-Round Rider, GC Rider, TT Rider, Domestique, Sprinter, and Lead Out, as well as the unfortunate news which dropped earlier this afternoon about the closure of GCN Plus. Obviously a product that many we have used and many of you have used as a means to watch live cycling. So we're going to talk about that as well with the info that's come out there and what that means for us in the future, or not us in the future, but as consumers. Where do we watch cycling in the future is what we're going to discuss in 24. That's a pretty important thing for everyone that watches this. But first, the Women's Awards Show, Benji. The best sprinter. I thought in February this year, after the first UAE sprint, that this was going to be a bit tighter. But in the end, I still think Lorena Wiebes runs away with this.
I think it's really intriguing looking at all the sprints they had throughout the year, because Wiebes and Cole are, for me, the two riders. I think for everybody, they are the two riders that you're looking at for the best sprinter category. And it's actually unsurprising that every single one of these categories has at least one SD Works rider involved. Sometimes it's like between many SD Works riders, but for sprinter, Wiebes 9 World Tour wins, 12 total wins. Charlotte Cole, same total wins, around 12 and 7 World Tour wins, but it's kind of an evolution throughout the year in my eyes, as in we started with the UAE Tour, and you said it, in that race, they were close. But I felt after that race that Wiebes was still the fastest sprinter, and that the difference was made in slight disadvantages for Wiebes in the stages that she ended up losing. So, for example, in one of the stages, she went early, in the wind early, and as a consequence, well, Cole was able to overtake her and win that stage. And then we go further through the year, and the obvious one is that the versatility between the two riders is different, but I'll let you judge that in a second. But when it comes to the pure sprinting, the Simac Ladies Tour Stage 3 for me was also a moment where Cole truly straight up beat Wiebes, which doesn't happen often in women's cycling that a sprinter does that. And that's one where I'm like, that might mean that she might be able to make another tiny step forward and maybe be on par with Wiebes in the future. But the versatility is what makes the difference, right?
Yeah, Wiebes just a little bit more fit, a little bit more versatile. I think even in stage 1 of the tour, she was in...
Yeah.
Well, I think she was in... Yeah, she won the bunch sprint behind in the second group, and that had a punchy climb about 9Ks cresting from the finish. So definitely much more versatile, although Cool was there as well. But yeah, Wiebes just kept winning, although... Yeah, not as dominant. We have to say, not as dominant, but
it's
yeah.
Is it partially because of the team situation? As in many of the races, she ends up winning the sprint behind. For example, in a Nokere Koers and so forth.
Yeah.
If it was Kopecky in a separate team and Wiebes in a separate team, both with full support, we might see the entire team surrounding Wiebes trying to chase down whatever Kopecky does there, if that's even possible, because Kopecky was pretty good in some of these classics races. And then maybe Wiebes wins the race, because now it's like the 1-2s for SD Works, where Wiebes ends up second. And I think that happened in Omloop as well, if I recall correctly. So the one thing I do need to mark is she was just so versatile that she was also very valuable to the team next to the sprinting, which might not necessarily mean much for this specific award, but the sprinting Kouberg, the fact that she was there still helping so late, and you mentioned that first Tour de France stage, the fact that they can use her tactically by having her in that group on that final hill in the first stage, and then Kopecky's looking behind her, oh, she's slipping a bit, now it's time for Kopecky to go, so that makes the team have more options, and I think it's pretty clear for me that Wiebes is still the best sprinter in the world, but when it comes to easy sprints, easy flat UAE Tour stages, stuff like that, Cole can compete with Wiebes.
Yeah, and the best example of what you're describing is the European Championships. Not sure if we mentioned that, where the Netherlands is there. It's not SD Works, but, you know, Netherlands. Bredevold is on her trade team, but she had Bredevold up the road. And then Wiebes beat Kopecky in the sprint up in Luke's backyard. So this is a re-recording, by the way. So we had loads of I had loads of Luke Netherlands farm jokes, and I intend to repeat them and get them in the second time of asking, particularly when we get to I can't remember, maybe the Amstel Gold Race scam, but that was in the men's race.
Jesus.
Oh no, the Pagacci one though. Anyway, I've gone off a tangent. I'm kind of flustered today, but yeah, it's Weber's first, Cool second. Who's third?
I find it really difficult. I think Consoni can fight for it. I think Balsamo has a bit of a year as a consequence of the injuries she's had. But she had one sprint where she straight up beat Weebers and Cole, if I recall correctly, towards the end of the season. I can't remember which race it was, but it did happen in my memory. So maybe I just made it up. Maybe I didn't. But she doesn't have the consistency throughout the year due to the injuries, I'd say. But I don't have the feeling I had a few years ago when we saw Cole coming up in the same team as DSM. The same team as Weebers back then. She came from a different team into DSM, and I was like, okay, she's got the results to be able to actually step up here. She's been able to compete with really good sprints, and I don't have that about someone else right now. I don't feel like I've got someone where I'm like, that's going to be someone competitive with these two riders next year.
I think third for me is Marianne Vos. She actually had a better season than I thought. It wasn't her best season, but she beat Charlotte Cool in a Vuelta sprint, and then she won a sprint of a small group the next day in the Vuelta, and she was, I think, 3 top 5s in the Tour de France, whereas Consoni didn't have that, and then 3 top 5s in the Giro Donna. So not her best year where she's winning classics or Wevelgem sprints leading out from 300 meters to go, but I think she is third. And in terms of the lead outs, there's 3 big ones. There's Guarici on SD Works, who's Weber's lead out, but then Kopecky, did Guarici do the Tour de France?
Nope.
She did not, so she didn't make the Tour team because they needed a stacked team, so Kopecky moonlighted there. And then there's Pfeiffer Georgie at DSM for Charlotte Cool and Sanguinetti at Trek as well.
But who is the best of those? And I'm thinking, honestly, quickfire response would be, I've got 2 first places. I've got Guarici solo, and I've got the DSM train in its full. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the DSM with Jastrab and
Koch as well.
Koch and Pfeiffer Georgie is really, really good. And you're right, it's probably the best overall unit. I don't think the same way about SD Works, but then there's, you know, the Lotto Touring and Ladies Tour where Guarici's winning that race with Weber's second. So I'd probably take her in bunch sprints alone, Guarici, over Pfeiffer Georgie. Georgie's obviously the better overall rider and classics rider. So it was weird, yeah, because it's like Guarici's in the Mercury role but couldn't go to the Tour. And so we didn't get to see her in action there. Maybe they did need an extra sort of dedicated flat domestique in the Tour. Maybe not really. We'll talk about that in best team. But yeah, I think that's clear. Guarici probably the best overall. Best TT rider, Benji.
Ooh, we might have a discussion on this one. I'm not sure. Names that come in my mind are Dygert World Champion, Reusser, because she's probably the most consistent when it comes to victories throughout the year. Vollering competed in the Tour de France TT and was relatively close to Reusser there. Then Kopecky and Grace Brown. For some reason, I always want to say Graham Brown, which is that Rabobank Australian sprinter from 15 years ago. And I don't know why. I think because he's like burnt into my childhood as this dude that I hated on Pro Cycling Manager as a kid. And that's why I keep thinking that. But Grace Brown deserves the respect. I feel like she's better at the longer time trials, as shown in the World Championships, to be fair. And a few times throughout the year, she had relatively good results as well. I have a hard time choosing between Reusser and Dygert. And my initial thought was going for Dygert. She won the World Championships. And my afterthought is, these riders don't have many races to prove their time trial skills in, because Dygert restricted herself a bit because she spends most of the time outside of Europe. She rode the American ITT and then the Worlds. But when it comes to Reusser, then she got more results. She won the Tour de France ITT. How much do you value the Tour de France FUM TTT versus the World Championships TTT, knowing there's a solid gap between the Tour de France and other races in women's cycling?
Yeah, it's a big TT, obviously. I'm not sure if I rate it more than Europeans. I
Ooh,
don't rate
yeah.
it the same as Worlds. I think if you had to say, would you rather win a Tour de France TT or the Europeans? I think riders would rather win the TDFF one.
Yeah.
And in the men's race, I think that applies similarly. So I think it is, yeah, Worlds, TDFF TT, and then maybe Europeans in its own category. And then there's the other TTs throughout the season, like in Tour de Suisse, where she won that TT, which was also ahead of Demi Vollering. And so she was really, really good. She won 3 TTs, I think, this season, which is like half the World Tour ITT calendar. And because the Vuelta had a TTT, where actually SD Works weren't that good. And then in Worlds, she had the complete meltdown, Marlon Reusser. So she DNF'd there. So that's the big knock against her against Dygert. It's like the biggest TT of the year. Dygert won. And and Dygert won that she was sick, right?
Yes. That's the crazy part. She was sick there. I think she said that she was sick. I would guess. Wasn't that the weird one where Canyon Schramm came out to say she was sick before the race?
The morning of the race, or something. Because no, I thought it was Excuse City. When I saw that statement, I thought she's told the team to start putting the excuses out there because she's not going to win. And she still came out and damn won, which is impressive.
Yeah.
And I believe she was sick because this is getting to this point. On her day, Chloe Dygert is the best time trialist in the world if everyone's healthy. I think that is clear. Like from Harrogate, just smoking Van der Brecher, I think she's the best. But she got that one win. But it's not like there's many TTs. She can't do Europeans, Benji.
True.
Am exit.
Get out of here.
Am exit.
Get out of here. Are British people still allowed to do the Europeans? Of course, Josh Starling, right? Am I dumb?
I actually was thinking, I didn't know. Australia can do Eurovision. Why can't we do European champs?
Man, get out of here.
Oceania champs, same UCI points. Easy farming, baby. Except Jaco decided not to do it during the relegation cycle last year. Even though that's like Astana's whole strategy for points is Asian champs, I think. Dygert won. No vax and whatever. Won that World's really impressive. I'm going Reusser because she was the best time trialist across the season after all that.
I'm going Dygert because World Champs ITT matters. And I'm going Brown third because I believe that she's underrated.
Yeah, I think you fully convinced me on Brown. Her TT season is actually very, very good. And 6 seconds off winning the overall Worlds. I was flirting with having Vollering in third because on a hilly parkour, I think she's very, very good, obviously. But she didn't win the Tour de France TT. And so, I have Reusser, Dygert, Brown. But that's a really interesting category. And I think the TTs are very exciting this year. Both the Worlds one, the TDF. I really thought the TTs were very, very good.
And Van Dijk is coming back, so that's going to be interesting next year. But anyway, TTs aside, let's go to the next category. A pretty quick one, this. Best domestique. Names that come in mind for me are a lot of SD Works riders. Maheux, Bredewold, Marcus, Reusser, once again. Georgie as well. That is not an SD Works rider, obviously. Odbianik from Movistar comes into my mind. Luz Aardegeest, the likes of Brody Chapman.
Patino,
also Realini in some races.
Yeah, Realini when she shouldn't have been.
Fem van Empel in the Tour de l'Avenir, but that's very specific to the point that it probably shouldn't matter for this one.
Very niche.
I'm going to be very shallow. I'm going to say Marlon Reusser because throughout the season, she's consistently been the rider that has been in the last phase of a race where she wasn't leader and still helping the others. But I know that's a very easy pick because
I don't agree.
Off air you mentioned that it sounds like I'm giving it to Van Aert in 2022, for example, which Fair.
Yeah, but Van Aert actually made a difference in big stages.
Reusser made a difference to win races, I believe.
As a domestique.
I will I will mention there were moments where the team misused her and therefore she wasn't able to offer much for Vollering. But that's not her fault. She was there to help. It's a team that had shit tactics.
I would sooner give it, even if it's not technically correct, I would sooner give it to the dedicated domestiques just because to recognize them, even though I accept, Reusser on Tourmalet was the one pulling for Vollering. She was the one there closing down Niewiadoma's move for Vollering, which is very important. So I accept that. But yeah, like the Bredevold and Majerus, more the unsung heroes of SD Works. Elena Cecchini as well, Anna Shackley, Lonica Uniken, Femke Marcus. Like, these riders also make a big difference to winning races. But I really like Movistar. I think have a more traditional. They have a much more traditional setup, like an old school setup of Van Vleuten the best, Lippert's the best puncher sprinter, and Norsgaard sort of breakaway. But the other riders are really dedicated professional domestiques, which it worked. Actually, like Movistar's tactics, like they won the Vuelta when they sent it in the crosswinds. Like tactically, the women's team very, very good. And so Floortje Mackay, Sarah Martin, Shayla Gutierrez, Jelena Erich, Alda Bjanic, and Paula Patino. So Bjanic I have as the best rouleur domestique this year. Patino is the best climbing domestique. And then, Bredevold as well, but I know that Reusser probably made more of a difference. They're my three.
And the beauty of that, in my opinion, is that right here, you see Reusser, who is a rider that is prominently one of the better riders in certain categories, like in time trial, for example. And she can win races on her own regard, but Vollering then buys her loyalty by having her also basically, she gifts a few GC victories to Reusser as well. I think one of them was where Reusser actually deserved to win, which I think was Tour de Suisse where she won the time trial.
Yeah.
But I swear in Itzulia, there was this moment in the last stage where Vollering could have easily said, Reusser, just lead this group to the finish line. But no, she let Reusser attack, which put all the others in a chasing position, and Reusser ends up winning GC. Let's hope for Vollering that she was okay with that. I think she was. But rewarding Reusser with that also buys her loyalty in the races where Reusser needs to help out Vollering, which matters.
Yeah, I think... I don't know, there's some strange interviews at the end of the Tour de France fan with Reusser. When
I don't remember.
I remember one being like, that's odd. About, are you happy for the team winning X? And she's like, well, I'm sure they're happy about this, but for me, it's not my result. I was like, okay.
Okay.
But actually gives a good interview. I like Royce. I actually like her as a writer. I think gives a really good interview, and she's obviously very intelligent. But I just like giving it to the sort of pure domestiques like Patino and co. Anyway,
I get that.
Best
Next
classics rider.
Ooh.
This is a tough one. I think this is the closest one of the year.
Might be. I think a lot of people are going to be controversial about both the best classics rider and both the best rider because it's between the same riders. I think it's between Vollering and Kopecky, and I don't see anyone who really comes near them. And when it comes to the cobbled classics, Kopecky is the first one. When it comes to the Ardennes, Vollering is the first one. Vollering's results in one-day races are Ardennes Triple, so Amstel Flash LBL. First at Strade, first at Dwars door Vlaanderen, if you want to count that. Then second at Worlds, behind Kopecky. Second at RVV, behind her teammate Kopecky. Second at Brabantse, but I once again don't really count that as much, just like Dwars door Vlaanderen. And on the other end of the spectrum, on the other side of the ring, we've got Kopecky, her teammate, who ends up winning RVV in front of Vollering. World Championships against Vollering. Omloop, which is ahead of Wiebes, but not the highest prestigious race in the women's cycling sport, I'd say. Second at Strade, behind Vollering. And then 7th at Roubaix, which I still think is a tactical failure from the team. And not competitive in Gent-Wevelgem. And I don't remember who won Gent-Wevelgem, actually. Was it...
Reusser with like a 10-minute solo.
Jesus Christ, that race was that is the award for one of the worst races of the year.
I think Kopecky literally just stopped. She would have stopped trying. I think that's why the
so
result looks
well.
strange there. Because Royce had one with like an hour and a half to go.
Who do you see having the battle won here?
It's tough because they did go head to head on a Healy Classics parkour, and Vollering won the sprint. But did Kopecky know that they were sprinting for the win at the end of Strada Bianca? What a finish that was, with Faulkner up the road. The illegal glucose monitor gives the big don't argue elbow into Vollering into the barriers. The horse trying to kill Vollering. Like, that was the last hour of that was unbelievable scenes.
Yeah.
Great race. And then, but Vollering won that one. But then it's like, could Kopecky have won Amstel? But because she came second, but Vollering won with a sort of 2K solo, Cavalli style. Again, that's sort of team dynamics. But Kopecky, for me, I think if you add up if you assign a weighting or a ranking to all the races, and then to first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then you add it all up, I think Vollering will come out ahead of Kopecky because she's always second or first in all these races. And Kopecky didn't win Roubaix, but world champs with less team support, with AVV and Vollering rolling attacks on her, Kopecky smoked them. And so, best overall one-day rider, classics rider, whatever you want to say it, I think it's Kopecky because she got the sprint. And that's how I see it, even if Vollering maybe has more stats accumulated this year, plus an Ardennes triple.
I agree. When we only look at the palmarès, it's Vollering. But when we look at the strength of the rider across all of these terrains, including the factor of the World Championships, like you mentioned, that's really the deciding factor for me. The fact that she rode on a weaker team, which was Belgium. Credits to Julie van der Velde, Julie de Velde, and so forth. In that race, they were strong. But it's not the Netherlands. Like, it's not even close. So I reckon I'd also give best classics rider to Kopecky. And that brings us to the opposite side of the spectrum.
Well, but just on that, it's also like, to you, is it Vollering won the Ardennes triple, but Flesch, hard to win solo there. Amstel, team dynamics, last 2Ks. Liège, probably the race that suits her the best. Couldn't drop everybody, went with Elise Long or Borghini, won the sprint. Whereas Kopecky, to me, it felt like when she just wanted to win the race in the Cobble Classics or Worlds, she just said, I'm going to win now. Tour of Flanders, 20K solo. Omloop, 12K solo. Roubaix, chasing, still won the sprint behind the breakaway. With it, she should have won that race. So, that's also why I have her first.
Yeah, and she's Flemish, so 10 points extra. Anyway, next category. Best GC rider. Unfortunately, there's no Flemish riders involved there. It's Vollering versus... It's Vollering. Sorry.
Well, it's her against Annemiek van Vleuten, who we can't forget in one of the biggest stage races of the year. It pulled off the big... Well, it wasn't a coup because she's Annemiek van Vleuten with the greatest GC Palmares ever. But she won the Giro d'Honneur. She won that Vuelta with the crosswind chaos stage where SD Works was sleeping. But on Covadonga, she lost a minute to Vollering. And then on the Tourmalet and the Tour de France, she really got beaten badly by Vollering. Like 2:34 that's a big gap on the Tourmalet. So it's Vollering. She won. Could have won at Zulia. Could have maybe won Swiss. And in the Tour, she was just at a level that was really, really high level. Like the watts there is crazy stuff because she's not just got the highest watts per kilo, she's also bigger than, like, taller and more athletic than a lot of these riders, so she's putting out more absolute watts. Just got the sprint, got the TT, unstoppable this year.
I agree, and like Tour de France Femmes is also the most important of these races. Would you say that winning the Tour de France Femmes is more important than winning both the Giro and the Vuelta combined in general?
Well, it must be, otherwise we'd be giving it to Van Vleuten.
Nah, but it's also, I think competition matters also in this like discussion, because the Giro was against not Vollerings, which it matters. And the Vuelta, I can't forget about hashtag Pgate. Like, it happened. without that, I don't see Vollering not winning that. Like, it was a valid strategy to attack there. Like, but that being said, it wouldn't have happened without hashtag Pgate.
Yeah. And it's also, I think the Vuelta is in a better place in the schedule. That's why we had the two big guns ahead of each other. And the Girodonna is during the first week of the men's tour, where I think if you want to do an ideal preparation for the women's tour when it's straight after the men's race, you want to skip that and you want to do an altitude camp instead of Girodonna. So that's why, yeah, the two combined, I'm not sure, but definitely it was, I think, optimal to skip the Girodonna this year.
Is it easier to combine in 2024, or will it be worse with the Olympics also being in between?
I think the Olympics is a week after the men's tour. I don't know where the Girodonna is in the calendar. Maybe they've changed it around. I mean, again, no races try to compete with the men's tour. And so that's now that it's, I think, RCS are managing that race, you would think they would try and change the calendar slot because it's very, very difficult to compete against the men's tour. But anyway, that's more into cycling mechanics. But yeah, Vollering also won Tour de Romandie against one of the best, top 3 GC riders this year for me, which was third place Kasia Niewiadoma, who finished second in that race, who finished third in Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, was the second best climber, and was second on Tourmalet, but Kopecky was on the same time as her. She was fourth in Swiss, third in Etzulia. Really, really consistent and good this year in GC. Maybe he took a step back in the Ardennes. So, yeah, I've got Vollering first, Van Vleuten second, who's now retired, and Niewiadoma third.
I've got Vollering first, Van Vleuten second, and I don't know about my first spot. Didn't think about it. I'd probably also say Niewiadoma. I have I like Labou as a cyclist, but I feel like she's not up there. I feel like maybe 5th, 6th or something is Labou at the moment for me. But that being said, having done all these categories, before we get to the best rider trophy, I want to ask you this question. It's also something I've been thinking about a few times. Which riders can we see step up in all these categories? Because I'm thinking about, I like that Dijgert, for example, nearly half of her races in 2023, she podiumed the race. And that's a pretty crazy stat to have, which means that you're pretty all-rounder, but you're also not the best in every single category. She's obviously, in my opinion, the best ETer of 2023, even though it's close with Reusser. But she also sprints relatively well. She also climbs relatively okay. It's not godlike, but okay. And when it comes to climbing, Realini is alive, but also Niedermayer, Bauernfeind. Can we see those step up? And then I look at Fem van Empel, who I've been hyping up way too much recently, because I truly believe she could step up to be one of the generation. What do you say that again? Generation riders? No.
Generational talent.
Generation talent riders. Yeah. Want to see her at Strade. Same with Puck Pietersen. But anyway, who do you feel like could step up?
I think Niewiadoma. I think she took a big step up in GC this year. Labou's 25 as well. She's young, and Niewiadoma, she's 29. She's been a pro for a while, but Van Vleuten's 41, and the last from 2017 to this year, she's been either the best rider in the world or maybe not this year behind Vollering. But yeah, from 2017 to 2022, she was the best rider in the world. 6 seasons from the age of like 34 to 40. And so they're not the same person, I know, but in terms of GC, and Uwe Mullman's still really good, and Thomas and Port really good, and Valverde, I don't see why Niewiadoma can't keep improving and can't take that step up. Can she beat Vollering next year? I doubt it, but I really think Niewiadoma's legit top 3 GC contender next year. Again, Dijgert is just, she'll be too focused on the track, too explosive, more of a one-day rider, and can do it all except the hardest Tourmalet sort of style climbs. Is Kopecky, she came second in the Tour, Benji.
Yes.
I don't see why she couldn't. Like, she won the Simac Ladies Tour. She could do well in other races.
I somewhat agree, but I also feel like that is peak. Kopecky that we're looking at. That is the best Kopecky we've seen. The one we saw climbing Tourmalet, 6th on the Tourmalet, for example. And it's also, it needs to be a race specific to her qualities, as in she had a solid advantage in the first 2 stages, which she can obtain in other stage races. I feel like she could have gained more in the stages. SD Works hindered both of their riders by focusing on both, but it's understandable that they focused on both to try and keep them both happy. Arguably gave Kopecky quite a bit of freedom during those stages. But I also feel like if we then look at the Tour de France Femme, it's also kind of only the Tourmalet in that Tour de France Femme. And then I'm thinking, okay, if there's 3 mountain stages, she probably won't be on the podium.
Yeah, or like next year's mountain stage is brutal. The last 2 that's going to be a real test for her. So
if she's there.
If she's there, because there is the Olympics. But yeah, she has to build up a big buffer on these sort of more pure climbers. Riolini would love her to step up. I think in terms of climbing, she's going to be top 3 on that Tour de France stage next year that we mentioned. But then there's all the the other issues and aspects to cycling of TT riding on the flat, punchy finishes, where because of her small size, descents, etc., it's going to be trouble for her. Like, remember when this year when Neuwiedomer went on that descent, and Vollering and Van Vleuten were there. I see Riolini getting dropped back to Group 3 there.
Yeah,
even if she's with them on the A.S.O.
It's not just Riolini. I think we've got the same issue with someone like Petra Szczasny on Finish the Koning. She was that rider that I think OTL'd the first stage of the Tour de France from 2 years ago, or 2022 that is, and 2023 in Tour de l'Avenir she finished ahead of Riolini on the mountain stage, but that's also because they both got fucked by the teamwork of Van Anrooy and Fem van Empel in that race, and their weight is a disadvantage. She's 45 kilos as well, so good luck going downhill as fast as a 55, 60 kilogram rider. Kilometer rider is a bit long, but
yeah, but exactly, like in a multi-mountain stages where there's no flat, it's okay. It's where there's like valleys and some punchy stuff and descents, that's the real trouble. Because on that Tour de France, Tour de l'Avenir stage you mentioned, was a proper mountain stage, arguably harder than the Tour de France Femme one. And she was 3rd on that stage. She was really, really good. So yeah, we'll be looking for those riders to step up as well. I like that there are more mountain stages coming into these races. But now for the final overall award, best rider, I think it's Van Vleuten. I have 3rd. Okay. It's hard to go past Van Vleuten in 3rd, I think. The big 2, Vollering and Kopecky.
There was a huge argument after the Velodor because a lot of people kind of were hoping Kopecky would win. Vollering ended up winning the Velodor, and I'll be honest, I kind of agree. As in, if we take a look at everything, we even spoke about the classics being so close between Vollering and Kopecky. So close, because successful-wise, Vollering has loads of results. 2nd at World Champs, 2nd at the Ronde van Vlaanderen, Strade winning, then triple Ardennes, but then also in addition to that, 1st at Tour de France Femme versus Kopecky 2nd at Tour de France Femme, which it's a podium at the Tour de France Femme. It should matter for Kopecky as well. If you look at road cycling results, it's straight up Vollering, and this is a road cycling podcast, so we don't consider the amazing achievements that Kopecky did next to the road, which is multiple world championships on the track and so forth. That's all impressive, but this is a road cycling podcast, so it's Vollering for me.
Yeah, I agree. The GC in those, like, Kopecky had almost the full team behind her in the Tour de France Femme. Stage 1, she's allowed to go for it. Takes that extra time whilst Vollering is mucking up the chase behind. And Vollering could have won that race. Like, this is what we were screaming about all race. Before the big mountain stage, we're like, when are they going to... She could have won Vollering the stage that... Who's the Alpecin? Castellane won. Vollering could have won that medium mountain stage and taken time if they just smashed it for her. So she was the most dominant GC rider, the most dominant Hill Classics rider, and then pretty damn good in the Cobble Classics too. So I have to give it to Vollering because at times, like I think the margin between her and the other riders is actually bigger than sometimes the results say in these races. So I also, I'm a GC guy, so if you have the GC results plus the one-day results, then...
Yeah, and I'm a classics guy, also valuing the GCs, but I'm a classics guy, and I still give Vollering it, because if you look at results, it's just more. She just won all year in different types of disciplines, and yes, she didn't win an RVV or Roubaix, but Kopecky also didn't win Roubaix. If Kopecky wins Roubaix, then I'll give it to Kopecky, in my opinion. Because Roubaix, RVV, and World Championships would be the equivalent of what Mathieu van der Poel did on the men's side.
And second in the Tour.
Yeah, and the green jersey.
Yeah. So then that changes it, but she didn't. So, yeah, Vollering, but still, we're talking, unfortunately, we've just spent a long time discussing in various categories a lot of things between riders on the same team, which is Vollering against Kopecky. And so now with Van Vleuten retiring, who fortunately wasn't on the same team, we are hoping there is some more competition against SD Worx next year. That's going to require money for the other teams, better selections, and getting up to their level. But hopefully that can happen, because, SD Worx this year obviously were the best team. 60 wins overall, 40 World Tour wins, with I believe there's less World Tour races in the women's calendar than the men's calendar, in terms of, like, there's 63 World Tour race days across the 3 men's Grand Tours alone. So they won 40 in a condensed calendar, more than Jumbo did. So incredible dominance. It's not good for probably,
for my entertainment, it definitely wasn't good, because how I felt when I was watching the season was a lot of the races, I just felt like I knew what was going to happen before the race started. And I always felt like unpredictability is something in cycling that is super valuable. The fact that you can't predict what's going to happen, that the last climb comes and something happens and you're like, whoa, I didn't see this coming. This is amazing. A plot twist, something like that. I love plot twists, and also in the sport. And sorry, but a lot of races were straight up boring this season. Gent-Wevelgem, sorry, but write it off. I didn't like that. Brugge de Panne was really good. That's the opposite side of the spectrum. That was one of the races that, how in holy hell is Brugge de Panne one of my favorite races of the season in women's cycling?
Because it's around your house.
Okay. That wasn't the reason, but echelons and so forth. But also next to that, the fact that we saw multiple teams fighting for the bloody victory.
Yeah.
And it's not just that they're winning in one category, they're winning in multiple disciplines. They've got the best rider overall, they've got the best classics rider, they've got the best cobble classics and the best Ardennes rider, they've got the best sprinter, they've got, in my opinion, the best
time trial
and the shared
rider.
Winner of time trial. They've got one of the best lead outs as well. Like, sorry, but this is shit for the sports entertainment. And honestly, I enjoyed watching the races less than last year, for example. And I hope that switches around again, because I love being invested in this.
Well, because the year before it was Vollering against, it was like the super team, SD Worx, and maybe that's Jumbo as well. But then you had AVV, was still the best. She was still the queen. And she, I guess, she still then torched Vollering in the Tour de France Femmes. So there was a better GC rider on another team back in 2022, but that wasn't the case this year.
It's as if Jumbo-Visma, in addition to the riders they already have,
had
would
Philipsen
also
and
have
Poggi.
Philipsen and Van der Poel. Is how I'd say.
Philipsen.
That's how I see it. Because then Pogacar is Van Vleuten, in my opinion, which is kind of weird.
No, that's a good analogy. But I think Strada, it doesn't, just because they win the race doesn't mean it's necessarily, like, Gent-Wevelgem and the men sucked too. That wasn't particularly exciting. But Strada was good to watch in the women's.
Yes.
And they went 1-2 because Faulkner was up the road, because there was lots of stuff happening.
Also because we didn't know if they were going to fight each other or not after the finish line.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully next year, I'm very hopeful that the Rielenis, the Canyon SRAM women are very exciting, the roster they have. And maybe the most exciting race of the year was Paris-Roubaix. That's the one that I really remember, because Alison Jackson won, and the breakaway was different. I really, really liked that race, the women's Paris-Roubaix. So maybe the new EF structure kicks on, and they got Faulkner, they got Ewers, they got Jackson. Anyway, that was our we're about to move on to GCN Plus. That was our women's awards show. Let us know who you think, what you disagree with.